Hello, everyone, and welcome to the fifth VALPRO PATH podcast. My name is Tamara Glesic, and I'm from Food Skill Hub, an organization that leads dissemination, communication, and exploitation activities within the VALPRO PATH project. In our last episode, we have talked about the factors that influence the widespread adoption of plant proteins, and we were joined by Paul Voss from Wageningen Food and Bio-Based Research. Today, we are approaching the same subject from a different perspective, featuring Mark Fenelon, who serves as the head of food program at TEAGASC Food Research Center, Moore Park. We extend a more warm welcome to Mark. Mark, hello. We are delighted to have you here on our podcast.
Hi, Tamara.
As the head of the food program at TEAGASC Food Research, what are your observations? So what are the current trends and consumer preferences that are driving the adoption of plant proteins in the food industry?
Thanks, Tamara. I suppose most of it is coming, well, it's coming from choice, diversification, a lot of the incorporation of plant-based foods now, and it's a lifestyle preference as well. Obviously, we've heard for years, more vegetables, fruits, whole grains, nuts, seeds, and legumes. And the reality is people are looking for a balanced diet, which includes animal source as well. But consumers are learning more about food origin. They understand nutrition, preparation, and obviously the links to sustainability. So I suppose it really comes down to a requirement for a balanced diet and also an interest in functional foods. So in other words, foods that are linked to our health and obviously our environment. And I suppose you see a lot of this, particularly you could say that the increasing tendency in the Gen Z population, which will be one of our largest, I suppose, consumers of plant-based, I suppose, in the future. And again, their heightened focus on nutrition and obviously sustainability as well there. So it really is a balanced diet, and people are getting very educated now in the type of foods we eat. And again, they're looking to be able to blend different foods for this reason.
Okay, so basically we're making educated food choices. I see. Oh, and what is the role of sensory properties in adopting plant proteins? Is it crucial to have satisfactory levels of taste, texture, and smell when we talk about plant proteins?
Yes, good question. And it is an interesting one. Obviously the flavors are different, and they're going to be different depending on the type of plant-based food you consume. And I suppose consumers obviously have different flavor preferences as well. But an interesting one, maybe if you take it as an example, might be fava bean versus pea, for instance. And you could say that the fava bean is, in some cases, can be more bland, but this is not necessarily a negative thing, because with the right culinary expertise, consumers can create different flavors. In other words, they can use it as a nutritional base because they're buying it for protein and so on, to suit the application or the food experience. So people who mix, can then get the flavors they want. And of course, as you mentioned, not to forget the smell, which is part of the flavor experience. And this is something that we're working on here as well. So they are different, and sometimes bland is not bad, and sometimes slightly more other flavors then they'll be used for different applications.
And for example, can we use technology and can we use innovation in food processing to make plant products more appealing for the consumers and individuals that choose to have a healthier diet?
We can, and again, as I say, the mixing of foods here comes into it. In relation to the processing, like consumers have increased awareness, obviously, of the different plant sources that protein sources, and even our carbohydrates and fats and fiber. So they're going to be looking for certain nutrients choices. And they want to try new experiences. So this can be achieved again, as mentioned, by mixing different plant proteins. But if you were, one of the other reasons for mixing plant sources like this is if you want to deliver a balanced amino acid source, for example, and we've always been, it's well known, mixing grains and legumes, for instance, is one way to help here. And amino acids are the building blocks of proteins. So we need to get our essential amino acids through our diet. So blending of the different plant proteins can do this. Obviously, as well, the different varieties we use here is going to be very important. So you can use technology, yes, and understanding of the nutrition and the latest analytical techniques can tell us what all these, measure amino acids, measure our fatty acid content, carbohydrates, soluble versus insoluble fibers, and so on. So we can use technology here. We can use it obviously in the formulation science then as well. In other words, knowing what foods to put together in this case. And again, you mentioned about the manufacturing as well. So obviously the manufacturing processors, will be designed to give us the most nutritious and safe product that we can have.
I also wanted to ask, since we are in the topic of plant proteins, but nutritionists and health professionals, they usually say we should stick to less processed food. And when we use technology, the food becomes more processed, but it still needs to remain within nutritional requirements for a healthy diet. How do you look at this?
Yeah, a lot of the processes are mild. They, like, at the end of the day, still we have to have a safe food.
Yeah,
We
sure.
we have to be able to reach the marketplace and it's still safe. So things like, for instance, a heat treatment or something has been used for thousands of years for food to reduce microbial loads, for instance. So it's a very well known, and we do it. Even in our kitchens, we heat foods. To cook it. So it's not overly processed from that point of view. And if you take a balanced approach to it and look at the safety side of it and the nutrition side of it as well, and the ability to be able to mix different foods as well, as we said, the processing side of it is probably not extreme from that point of view.
Excellent. It's good to hear that. Okay, so since you're working at TEAGASC and you're the leading institution in Ireland on this topic, are there any research advancements or key discoveries you would like to share with us? And of course, what is the position of the VALPRO PATH project in this scientific landscape?
Yeah, so I suppose like VALPRO covers the entire supply chain. So we're talking about plant varieties, so even the varieties that we select, and optimizing plant varieties for nutritional content and even location in which they're grown. Obviously with our climate change and so on, weather is changing across the world and so on. So different plants can be grown in areas maybe they may not have been before, and so on. And obviously this is linked to our supply chain and market access. So in terms of the research there, selection of different varieties and so on is going to be really important. And the valorization of the non-protein parts of the plant. In other words, to make it more economically viable. So no food waste. So in terms of the discoveries and the research then at TEAGASC and through VALPRO and with our colleagues, is to make sure we don't have any food waste. And you talked about processing as well. Minimal processing obviously is important, but still to be processed in such a way that the food is safe and can be used. So obviously new technologies can be incorporated at the farm level and the manufacturing level as well. And again, this is to ensure safe and nutritious foods and ingredients. So a lot of the research we're doing here is targeted at both the variety level, at the production level, but also then understanding the nutrient density of the different foods. And we talked about that when we talk about formulation and mixing different foods, to understand what we're mixing. And the consumers want to know that. They want to know the protein content, the fat content, the carbohydrate, what type of carbohydrate, what type of fiber, which is very important now. It's one of the main reasons for usage of plant proteins, plant foods, I suppose, or plant ingredients is the source of fiber. So all the technologies we're using then in developing is basically on the analytical side of it, but also on the farm side and then the manufacturing side, to make sure that we're able to process them in such a way or that they're safe and obviously can reach the consumer in a way that they can be used further than in their own food choices.
Mm-hmm. So basically, you mentioned the value chain. So at the end of the value chain, essentially, is the consumer, the customer. So what would you suggest? What advice would you give to the individuals that are seeking to incorporate more plant proteins in their everyday diets?
I think it's not to be nervous of hybrid plant-based mixtures. So in other words, like different plants and so on. Obviously, the need for more fiber is something that's that has been highlighted. So not be afraid to mix different plant sources and even plant and animal sources. At the end of the day, it's a balanced diet. And I think people are very interested in what nutrition they receive now, and they want to know what's in their food and so on. So I think it's basically not to be nervous of that. And I think nowadays with the level of knowledge that's known about the nutrient content and the nutrient density of our foods, I think it's something that you can definitely very quickly look at, from a sustainability even point of view, is to look at, how much nutrients am I receiving for what I'm buying? In other words, what is the nutrient density of my food and so on. And of course, it must taste well and flavor. So, but yeah, so that'd be something that I would say, look at your, don't be afraid to mix the different sources.
Mhm. So today's customers, they want to be informed and they also consider the environmental impact, basically. So we take more, we consider more the environment and the sustainability factors.
Yeah, yes, and it's important to understand how much nutrients are we getting for that environmental impact. And it's not straightforward. It's not straightforward because with different sources, different foods, and so on, even between animal and plant, it's not straightforward. So that's something that I think people are learning more about, definitely, and it's something we're learning about in VALPRO as well.
Okay, so it's safe to say that it's a new trend. Can you maybe tell us what are the new trends and that we expect in 2024? What we expect to see in the food industry in regards to plant protein?
Yeah, well, I think we're definitely going to see different plant protein sources. So, as the technology has developed and as people's understanding of the different, contents of protein and other nutrients within plant-based foods, you're going to see new sources, and we already have a large range of different plant-based protein sources, but you also see plant-based fiber, plant-based, insoluble, soluble fibers, plant-based fats and so on. So, there are different, I suppose, different crops coming onto the marketplace. And one of the reasons, I suppose, is again diversification and people's understanding and what's safe as well, obviously, because with the analytical techniques of today, people can test and make sure that the different sources can be used in foods, safely and provide the nutrition. So you're going to see that. You're going to see also, obviously, the sustainability side of it. So, and this goes for all foods we eat. People are going to be aware of the environmental footprint of whatever the food is. So you're going to see, for that reason, some even of the plant-based ones will be different than others, and so on. So that's again the life cycle analysis, I suppose, all the way through the supply chain is something that we'll be looking at very closely in the VALPRO project as well, and linking that to what nutrients we're getting. So in other words, per the nutrient density, as I mentioned. So these are sort of trends.
So I can conclude that VALPRO PATH project has a comprehensive approach, and that it is in line with the trends that are going to be present in the upcoming years.
Yes.
Okay, I would like to thank you very much for this fruitful discussion. It was great to hear some insights from the research points of view. I would like to invite all our VALPRO PATH podcast listeners to join us within the next episodes. If you have not so far, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. And we would once again like to thank you, Mark Fenelon, for joining us today.
Thank you, Tamara.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, and see you next time. Bye.